And now we're going to hear from CIPC's Executive Director, Cynthia Buiza.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Thank you so much, Boom Shake. That was an amazing, amazing way to start the day. So can we give just like some love to Boom Shake? Can I see a show of hands? Great. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, California. I hope you can hear me. I know that we cannot touch each other right now, give each other hugs, thumbs up, and all of that. We usually do this in the Capitol every year, but I know that we can feel each other. We can feel each other's hearts. And I am very, very excited about Immigrant Day today and our Digital Day of Action. Before I begin, I would like to thank first and foremost the amazing CIPC team who organized this event. Thank you so much. You inspire me and make me feel hopeful and courageous every day. I also want to thank the CIPC Regional Capacity Building Partners, the CIPC Steering Committee, our funders, our speakers joining us today, partners, and our many guests joining us from across the state. Welcome to Immigrant Day 2020. Before I continue, I would like to propose a few seconds of silence for our brothers and sisters on the front lines of this pandemic. Loved ones, those we have lost, those who are suffering, those who are fighting, and those who are left out of relief. Thank you for that. What a difference a couple of months make. And here we are, for the first time in more than 2 decades, celebrating Immigrant Day online. We are deeply honored that nearly 1,000 of you are joining us today to perform an act of defiance against this anvil of sickness that sits on our collective psyche, and to sound an urgent clarion call. There is no defeating the physical and social ills that beset us today unless we work together and bring everyone along. What we have seen since we began sheltering in place is a country laid low by an unprecedented public health crisis. In a very short period of time, our shared knowledge of the cracks in our social safety net, our horror at the utter lack of national leadership, and the suddenly shared urgency to survive have accelerated at an incredible rate. Much has been said about the inequities and racial disparities displayed by this pandemic. But we all know that this reality is not new. It is merely heightened. And what is important is to finally address the historical inequities that exacerbate the marginalization of vulnerable populations as we map our way out of this current moment. The poet Billy Collins said, "Sometimes we need an event to shock us into the present, an event so disruptive that it does not allow us to continue wallowing in the past or putting off things until an indefinite mañana." Let us learn the lessons of this crisis fast. Let us no longer put off the great urgency to address the social cancers that ail this American society. We have to fight for everybody now. Today, I am asking you to join me and our partners and the CIPC team in the 100 legislative visits we will conduct to tell our leaders that we cannot win this battle if we do not fight for everyone. Let us fight for everyone, by including undocumented members of our community and providing them access to healthcare, access to unemployment insurance, and other life-sustaining supports. Let us show our concern for the houseless by addressing their continued suffering and disenfranchisement. Let's affirm our commitment to dignity and freedom by keeping immigrant families together. Our policy platform today seeks to remedy deep disparities that have gone on for far too long. From providing access to healthcare for undocumented seniors, to extending the earned income tax credit for ITIN filers, to expanding worker protections to include domestic workers, among many other aspirations. We stand with all of you in fighting for a California that truly includes everyone. We know that we are articulating these demands at an extremely painful and very difficult time in our state's history. We are aware of the limitations that will be imposed by an economic downturn and a huge budget deficit. We are not unrealistic, but we are saying, hear us. Do not forget about us. Work with us on creative ways to address these challenges. Ensuring that the most vulnerable among us are not forgotten in a renewed post-pandemic vision for California is not only humane, but also sound economic policy. I will end by assuring you of CIPC's enduring commitment to our shared just cause. The enormous challenges we face demand unity, discipline, and solidarity. Building power together is the only way to protect us from the divisive impacts of major crises such as these. The work ahead will be brutal and complex, but we will complete it with our courage, solidarity, resilience, and power. Immigrants are made for tough times. I know, I am an immigrant. And in no other time is our courage and tenacity needed as it is needed today. We can and must prevail. Thank you. Gracias. Maraming salamat. And have a great Immigrant Day.
Thanks so much, Cynthia. And now we'll hear from California's Lieutenant Governor.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Eleni Kounalakis, Lieutenant Governor of California. It is wonderful to be with all of you this morning. I especially enjoyed the way we started. Thank you, Boom Shake, for that. I think every single Zoom's call should start that way. It would definitely help for those of us who feel like it's just one after another. And, you know, it's not the same to be doing this virtually than to be doing the real thing. But it's great that we could get together this way. So thank you for your advocacy. Thank you for organizing your virtual meetings today. And I'm really honored to be part of it. So I thought I would just start by giving you a little bit of my own personal story. I'm the daughter of an immigrant. My husband is the son of two immigrants, all from Greece. And certainly the immigrant experience wasn't just something that my husband and I both experienced, but really all of the communities that we grew up within, because through our church, through our neighborhoods, we just were part, both of us, myself in Sacramento, my husband in the Bay Area, part of these communities of people who felt so fortunate to have the opportunities that we had and that our communities had, but also understood the constant fight against prejudice and injustice. In my family, My father came over after the Second World War. He came when he was 14. He had no money, spoke no English, and landed in the fields of California as a farm worker. He had the opportunity to go to school. He ended up going to Sacramento and enrolling at Sac State. Part of the reason I'm so incredibly passionate about public higher education in California, because my own grandmother never learned to read. My husband, both of his grandmothers, neither of them learned to read. And these weren't, these were high functioning, smart, capable women, but they had no opportunity. And in the culture and the time that they lived, education was not available to them. And so education is such an important part of the pathway that so many immigrant families in the United States and here in California have. And keeping that access and expanding that access is something that's super important to me. So I grew up in Sacramento. I went and became the first in my family to go to a four-year college and graduate. My dad didn't quite graduate. And when I was 43 years old, after a career in building master plan communities and delivering housing for people, but also my own advocacy and involvement in activism, I became the United States ambassador to Hungary. So it's quite a journey. I always say that in my case, you can't forget where you come from because it all happened pretty fast. My grandmother couldn't read. She let her son come to the United States alone. And in one generation, the president of the United States sent me back as an American ambassador. And most stories are not, it's an extreme story. I'm very well aware of that. But it's this pathway that so many immigrants are on of working hard to build more opportunity and a better life for their families. And in California, it has been the underlying story of California's success, now as the 5th largest economy in the world, has really been built on this. And when I traveled this state, when I was running for election, I met with people of all walks of life. I met with women who picked strawberries in Santa Cruz, who said, look, we know this is probably going to be our job in our lives, but we want our children to have access to education. And we need to make sure that we can stay in one place long enough that they can finish the school year, because too many of them were not able to graduate from high school. So these are the stories that I carry with me. I was very honored to be elected in 2018, the first woman ever elected lieutenant governor of California. This experience I've had in my life as the daughter of an immigrant, as someone who came out of a very vibrant immigrant community. What I see is that whether you come from any part of the world, whether you come from Greece, whether you come from Central or South America, whether you've come from Asia, we all have the same thing. We bring our energy and our ambition and our ideas, and we make this country strong and better. And no part of the United States has benefited more than California. We are the 5th largest economy in the world. And we have the highest percentage of immigrants in the United States, 27%. So we are 40 million people, and we have over 10 million immigrants here. And these things are connected. And we need to recognize that not just the vibrancy of our economy that's driven by immigration here in California, but the vibrancy of our society, the openness of our society, the fact that we are more open and more accepting of each other's differences is driven by this. And it is the underpinning of our great strength. Now, we are in difficult times. We were in difficult times before the COVID-19 pandemic because of the fact that we have Donald Trump, an administration that is so mean-spirited, using immigrants as their as their scapegoat for anything and everything that they can find to foment dissatisfaction in our country. You know, when I was serving overseas, it was part of our ordinary talking point that the United States is a nation of immigrants. Trump and his people stripped that language from the websites and have tried to strip it from our history. It is unprecedented and truly contrary to everything that we have stood for and what America means in the world. And California has been pushing back in many ways. And I don't want to enumerate everything, but I do want to highlight a couple of things. So first of all, I think it's important for everyone to share within their communities the critical importance of the census. The administration is going to do everything they can to intimidate people. They have been doing everything possible to intimidate people to not register. That, oh, well, you know, if I register for the census here in my household and report the people in my household, maybe they're going to come after us. Maybe they're going to look and see if we have friends or family or people who are undocumented, and we will be exposed. We have to push back against that. It is in the Constitution, not a question of whether or not a person is documented. We count everybody. We count everybody. And we give out assistance and aid and allocations out of the federal budget based on population. And it's incredibly important that everybody get counted. Not to mention the fact that our congressional districts will also be impacted. So that's one thing I just want to, you know, I know you're all hearing it. Many of you are probably engaged, but this is incredibly important call to action. The other thing I want to highlight is from the very beginning, the Governor Newsom has made it clear that nobody gets denied treatment for COVID-19 based on their immigration status. That is very, very important for people to know. Now that we have more testing, we're over 25,000 tests a day. Testing also is not predicated on immigration status. So it's really important that people know that they have access to treatment and to testing regardless of immigration status here in California. Beyond that, it's important to underscore that neither of those things, accessing those things, will not impact people's public charge status. Another highly controversial, mean-spirited, nasty approach that the Trump administration is taking with immigrants, trying to create an environment of fear and intimidation, a climate of intimidation, to keep people from accessing aid because they think it's going to impact their public charge status. It will not. So those things I want to highlight. I also want to highlight that, you know, 10% of our workforce in California, it is estimated, 10% is undocumented, which means that at this point, there is no unemployment access for the undocumented portion of our workforce. We all know the underlying injustice that has created this situation, but for the moment, here we are. And so what the government did is he created a special fund to give one-time assistance to families who are undocumented, workers who are undocumented, of $500 per person. And we're working with local nonprofits to help distribute those funds. Again, I hope people are aware of this, and any feedback that you have about this, it is certainly imperfect. It is hard to be able to find people. We're working very hard at the state level, though, to get that assistance to people. And by the way, we know it is inadequate, but it is something, and we want people to access it. Finally, I want to just talk about some of the other things that are happening at the federal level. The United States, and I can say this as a former United States ambassador, we had a consular office in our embassy, in my embassy in Budapest. We in the United States have signed on to international doctrines that assure that asylum seekers are able to go through the asylum process here in our country. Donald Trump and his administration are doing everything possible to undermine that. They're using COVID-19 to do so. So they are turning people away at the border under their new COVID-19 protocols, digging into policies to try to justify these new policies, which are highly inappropriate and illegal. Of course, you may also have heard that the Trump administration is using COVID-19 to implement a 60-day freeze on the issuance of green cards. Horrible situation. And again, using xenophobia and trying to use this global pandemic as a way to scapegoat immigrants and to stop what has been so incredibly important to our country, which is the process of immigration. And then finally, I think it's important to note that the Trump administration is using every possible means to use their rhetoric and their policies to scapegoat immigrants from Asia by pounding the drum that COVID-19 came from China. Let me just say that the world has anticipated, the United States has anticipated for decades the possibility of a global pandemic, and that it could have come from anywhere. I know people who are Asian, of course, doesn't matter where, but they are experiencing people in law enforcement, people in essential services, people on our front lines who are the target of racist attacks, again, that are being fomented and driven by the Trump administration's harping on this idea that, and idea stated by Secretary of State Pompeo, that there's somehow evidence that COVID-19 came from a lab in Wuhan. And every expert has said that there is absolutely no evidence that this is how it happened. The fact of the matter is that we are living in very difficult times. California is a bright spot. And I just, in conclusion, as you go on, want to highlight two things. One is the way that we started with Boom Shake and finding joy and finding love and finding positivity and finding solace in what our culture has benefited from in terms of the beauty of cultures around the world coming together. We have to continue to elevate that because it does give us such a sense of empowerment. So I want to highlight that as I end on a positive note, that we are proud and we celebrate our cultural heritages of people coming from around the world. And let's keep doing that. But I also have to highlight that California is up against a very difficult situation with this administration, and that we have to roll up our sleeves and stay vigilant to fight back and to do everything we can. And that finally, we have to be counted in the census, and we absolutely must do everything we possibly can as activists and organizers to get Donald Trump and his team of people with their anti-American, in my view, anti-American approach to immigration out of the White House once and for all. Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, everyone. And let's make it a great day.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor Kolanakis, and thank you, Cynthia, as well, for your amazing words. Good morning, everyone. My name is Edwin Carmona Cruz. I am a member with the Free SF Coalition, as well as co-director with Pangea Legal Services. And so I'm going to be your MC for today. So, buenos dias. And today is not a rally if there's no chanting. So we're gonna do a super quick chant for you all. I'm gonna say "Si se puede," you're gonna say "Si se puede," and I'm gonna say "Yes we can," you're gonna say "Yes we can." So I'm gonna go into the bigger view so I can see everyone out there. Okay, ready? Si se puede. Si se puede. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Okay.
We can.
Si se puede.
Si se puede.
Yes, we can.
The host.
Yes, we can.
Se puede.
Repeat back
Sí
what I
se puede.
Sí se puede.
Yeah.
Se puede.
Se
Puede.
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 Sí se
Puede.
Yes, we can.
We have
Still going. They're still going.
to everyone.
Sí se puede.
We will continue on with far in distance, but we will always be together in our hearts. So I do want to start off by directing folks to the program for today. We have an action-packed program, and I'm really excited about everything we're about to do today, from the listeners, from the speakers, to the legislative visits, to a whole slate of panels in the afternoon to really get an understanding of where our communities are at and where our collective power is being harnessed. So I did want to start off by saying, so we'll have our legislative visits, and as well as our program. Our panels for this afternoon are pretty incredible. We have schools and communities first, campaign updates and getting involved. The census, getting counted during COVID-19, which is super important. A special screening of coverage. I saw Seth earlier and Hector, I believe. So an incredible job for you all and everyone who's supporting coverage, as well as supporting all workers, from relief funding to unemployment insurance for all, which is something super necessary, as the Lieutenant Governor has stated. And last but not least, we have an immigration enforcement and COVID-19 panel, which will be super critical, especially in this time. So without further ado, and I would like to introduce our first speaker for today, for the program, not discounting the incredible words from Cynthia and our Lieutenant Governor. But up next, we have Dr. Joaquin Arambula, who's going to talk to us about the importance of health for all, especially for our seniors. Dr. Arambula, please take it on.
Thank you. And I do think it's important for us to be grounded and to remind ourselves of our community, especially during this pandemic. And so want to take a moment to appreciate the host for starting the Si Se Puede, especially since I was born in Delano in the middle of the farm workers movement. It is nice to sometimes be reminded of who we are and what we're fighting for. Now, I came to you today to speak a little bit about who I am and why I am in this space, and enjoy being able to fight for all of us to be ensured that we have access to healthcare. Now, I spent a decade as a doctor because I learned early on that an education helps you to be able to give back to your community. And for 10 years, I worked in an emergency department in Selma, the raising capital of our world, where I saw all members of our community. And I saw a real travesty when people were denied basic access to preventative services, who were not given the dignity and respect that I believe they deserve for being a member of our community. And it was in that spirit that I was seeing things like previous pandemics, that I saw what occurs to many within our immigrant community, that I decided to change a little bit and to fight back and to give back and to serve my community by running for office. And by running for office and serving in the assembly, I chair a budget subcommittee where I oversee a third of our state budget. And what I see clearly right now is the great need, the tremendous need from communities like mine. Just this past weekend, I was in Firebaugh at a food distribution, helping to look firsthand at those who were suffering, who right now are not getting the employment that they need. And I saw communities that didn't have access to services, just basic necessities, and it reminded me of that quote from Cesar Chavez that many of us know. of the irony that we pick fruits and vegetables to fill other people's tables to such abundance, and yet we have so little left for ourselves. And coming from the fruit basket of the world, I think it's important for us to elevate those stories, to carry that message, and to remind our lawmakers who are in Congress that if they are going to deem that there is an essential workforce, that I think they need to do their job as well as lawmakers and to pass comprehensive immigration reform now. Because short of that, what we are trying to do as a state is to try to make up for what the feds are not doing. And I am proud that California is pushing back and that we are leading on things like emergency relief. And the governor is a true leader in this space. And I think we need to appreciate him for the ways in which he is making and pushing this issue forward. And so I am trying to figure out what role I do. But I will tell you, I work at our state capitol right now. I am showing up to work because if we are going to say that people are going to be working in our fields, then I think it's important that I show up to work as well and do what I can to help to tell our story. And right now, we are elevating three main issues that we have talked about with the Latino Caucus. And I want to thank many of you who are on this group for helping to get many of us elected. But we are now roughly a quarter of the entire legislature, and we met with our governor, and we talked about three issues, and one of them was health for all elders. I'm proud to jockey the bill by Senator Durazo and think that we need to continue to tell the story, especially now, about how our elders need to be protected because they've sacrificed for us, and they are so vulnerable during these times. We also elevated the story of needing for EITC for our I-10s to make sure that all workers are treated equal, that we can help to make sure that those who are working right now are able to receive the tax credits that everyone else is able to receive and benefit from. It's the best way we can to avoid and help in anti-poverty, and think that it's something that should have been extended to our immigrant communities, but for their status. And think that this is a wonderful way that California can lead. And we also spoke about the need for emergency relief now, that people had urgent needs in the moment, and California was able to and has stepped up to that. And I think that is a way that we can show that we are winning, that we're winning by loving, that we're winning by caring about our community, all of our community, and that it's worth sacrificing ourselves and doing something about. And so I'm pleased to be joined on this virtual Zoom rally with so many of you as we can help to tell our stories, to elevate our communities, and to make a difference. Because by doing that, we can be the change that we want to see in the world. And I'm pleased to be able to join you. And thank you for having me here today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arambola, for your words. And like I said, you know, today we're standing together to let the California legislature know that immigrant rights are California rights, right? And our communities are a vital part of the social fabric of our society. And each fabric type, whether it's sequence, whether it's suede, you know, is different in a different range, and it's because of our background and our lived experiences. So we're all together one, and together a big garment that is full of life and full of history. And each piece of fabric tells a story. So without further ado, I have the honor to introduce Milad Turabi, who is an MD candidate at Stanford from the San Diego Border Dreamers, who will give us a little bit about their story and the importance of passing health for all. Milad?
Hello, everybody. So my name is Milad Turabi, and today I'll just talk a little bit about my experience as an undocumented immigrant and my mother's experience dealing with the lack of health care. So as I mentioned, I'm an undocumented immigrant, and for most of my life, my family and I have faced a shortage of essential medical resources because we were neither eligible for government subsidized insurance, and oftentimes we weren't able to afford anything from the private sector. But these realities actually transform my resolve to want to become a physician that will battle institutional injustices that limit the healthcare rights of the most vulnerable in our society. Currently, the most vulnerable are actually undocumented seniors. Due to their immigration status, they're unable to qualify for full scope Medi-Cal to receive life-saving treatments. Instead, their medical care is relegated to emergency room visits or avoiding treatment altogether. And this ultimately turns acute and treatable illnesses to painful chronic conditions. Forcing our elderly community members through this pipeline of medical care is both immoral and fiscally irresponsible. We actually lose a lot of money because we force so many people to go to the emergency room. Moreover, folks should not have to wait for an emergency to seek treatment. And this shift towards preventative medicine versus managing chronic treatments, like I said earlier, could actually save our state a lot of money. My mother is actually one of those undocumented seniors. I've seen firsthand the impact of this current healthcare system. For most of her life in the United States, she was uninsured. The hospital and clinical visits were always followed by expensive out-of-pocket payments. Many times my mom would simply avoid care because of the costs. And this is a reality that many other low-income undocumented seniors have to face. We're fortunate that today she does have Medi-Cal due to her temporary protective status, and our family is no longer one emergency away from financial ruin. Ultimately, people should not have to choose between their finances and healthcare, because healthcare is a human right, and our elderly family members should be given that same right. That is why it is crucial that we keep Health for All seniors in the budget and implement it as soon as possible. This proposal is particularly important during the COVID-19 pandemic when so many people are at risk for infection. The virus is especially lethal for the elderly, and we must ensure our undocumented seniors have access to life-saving treatments because undocumented seniors are even more at risk since they are excluded from many vital services altogether. Ensuring that they can seek wide-ranging treatments is not only important for their safety, but also for the safety of our communities as a whole. I know that currently California does allow for undocumented folks to seek treatment and testing without a financial burden, but I think this highlights the fact that allowing treatment is the immoral approach and should continue long-term. Now, I'll just say, the reason I'm becoming a physician is because my life's goal is to actually lower the barrier of health access for medically indigent communities. I'm asking the state of California to do the same as it relates to undocumented seniors and to prioritize this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Milad, for sharing your testimony and being so vulnerable about that. So thank you again. I do want to give a reminder for our participants, including myself, which I can get really excited about Immigrant Day of Action. However, we do want to slow down just a little bit. We do have our monolingual Spanish speakers as well as other Spanish monolingual speakers on the line. So we want to make sure it is accessible to everyone, including, again, myself. I get a little excited. These stories really get me going. And up next, I know this person personally, and they're an incredible advocate on the ground, who's going to talk to us a little bit about Cal EITC and also just their efforts that they're doing locally. I would like to introduce Maribel Cruz, but first I do want to call out and really uplift all of their efforts with the Undocu Fund in Long Beach, who has done a tremendous job in ensuring that our communities have extra income. And this is why it's important that Cal EITC be passed, so our families that are filing with ITIN numbers can also have some sort of financial safety net and to support our families. So without further ado, again, Maribel Cruz, my prima, I'm so excited to hear what you have to share with us today.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Hopefully y'all can hear me. Buenos días a todos. Espero que me estén escuchando bien. My name is Maribel Cruz, and I work with the Long Beach Immigrant Rights Coalition. I currently also live in the city of Long Beach. Today, we are all meeting virtually because our world has changed. Today, undocumented immigrants like my parents, my cousin, my aunties, my neighbors are learning to navigate through this pandemic without any without jobs and without any type of financial safety net. Even in these unprecedented times, the federal government has excluded undocumented immigrants from receiving critical aid through the stimulus plan. But excluding immigrants isn't something new. We continue to see these exclusions in the state of California as well. Did you know that most immigrants that file with their ITINs are excluded from critical tools that help lift families out of poverty? One of these tools is the California Earned Income Tax Credit, or CAL-EITC as we all know it here. And before I explain why this is very important to me, I want to go ahead and give you a little bit of background about just my family and how this affects us directly. My mom and dad are some of the people that are being excluded from the CAL-EITC. My parents and I came to the US from Mexico in the early 90s. And when they got their ITINs, they started filing their taxes right away. My parents have never made a lot of money. My dad worked for many years in a clothing factory where he was barely making minimum wage. And now because of COVID, he doesn't have a job. My mom also has been working for many years by cleaning houses. She really hasn't had a lot of money to save. And as we were growing up, all the money that they ever earned was for rent or food. Now my parents are facing an uncertain future because of this whole pandemic. My parents are facing this uncertainty, and a tax credit would be extremely beneficial for them. They would be able to pay for some of their medical needs, their rent, or even help them start their own business, especially now that, our immigrant communities are so creative, and my mom makes some amazing tamales, just throwing it out there. My mom is resilient, my family is resilient, and my parents have invested their lives in the state of California. Why not invest in immigrant families? Some of you are wondering, why should we care about a tax credit when we're grappling with the fallout of a health pandemic? The answer is very simple. Families are facing poverty at the levels that we've never seen. The effects of COVID will be felt for years to come. My parents are only one example of people that are being left out from this tax credit. And I'm pretty sure you all can think of families with kids that would greatly benefit from this tax credit and help them during these difficult times. Providing ITIN filers the California income tax credit will not only help stimulate our economy, but it will give families a fighting chance to lift themselves out of poverty. This is the only fair thing to do. Today, we have the power to make a long-lasting impact in our families, our children, in our communities. We are truly living in uncertain times, and we can't wait any longer. And here in Long Beach, we are also trying to make our impact to help undocumented communities by providing some sort of aid, but it is not enough. So that's why we turn to the City of California and all the lawmakers to make this a reality. Thank you so much.
Maribel, muchas gracias. Salúdame a mi tía. Say hi to my tía for me. Thank you again for all of the incredible work that you and the LBIRC team is doing in Long Beach. And now we'll just go just one city, a couple cities over to the assembly member who represents the 64th Assembly District, which includes South Bay region of the Los Angeles County. Assembly Member Mike Gibson.
Good morning, Edwin. How are you?
Good morning. How's it going?
Going well. Listen, let me say thank you very much for allowing me to be here. Maribel, thank you so very much for your testimony and sharing with us about the struggles that your family is in fact going through. And I want to say, when I get back home, I want to try to connect with your mom so I can get some of those tamales. So I really appreciate each and every one of you. I want to also thank the Immigrant Policy Center for organizing this rally. It's really important. I am Mike Gibson. I represent the 64th Assembly District. Those are areas that includes Watts, Willowbrook, where I was born and raised, Compton, Carson, Wilmington, North Long Beach, Linwood, Gardena, and also Torrance. I represent the 6th poorest district in the state of California. My district has a large population of immigrants from many countries, from Nigeria, from Africa, from Mexico, and that's just to name of just a few. There's about 27,000 individuals from Africa or from the diaspora who are also here in California that makes up the immigrant population as well. Now more than ever, it is important that we all reach out and put our arms around each other during this very difficult time of COVID-19. Our eyes have never seen anything like this before, and certainly this has become the new normal. But now, individuals are having a tough time accessing healthcare. That's why I'm proud to be the co-author of AB4, which will provide healthcare for every, and I want to underscore it, every California, regardless of immigration status. That is important. Immigrants from all over the state of California deserve to have healthcare in this state. It is not just a human right, it is a human necessity. Regardless of who your mother, who your dad is, what language you speak, if you are here, you should have access to healthcare. I'm also proud to announce that I am the co-author of AB 1593, which will allow I-10 holders to be able to receive California Earned Income Tax Credit. Let me tell you why that's important. There are individuals who have an I-10 number who pay taxes. And when we talk about stimulus and unemployment, these individuals who have I-10 number cannot access any of those resources. And that is unfair. That is unfair. They pay taxes and not have access to essential programs like the California Earned Income Tax Credit. Currently, there are over 500,000 hardworking immigrants who pay taxes, who pay their fair share of taxes each and every day. For many of the families, they work from paycheck to paycheck. This tax credit will allow them to have a breath of fresh air, to be able to provide food for their families, to put clothes on their children and their families' back, and a roof over their heads. We all want to give our children the resources that they need, that they can be the best that California has to offer. There are over 200,000 children who are being impacted because their parents are not able to receive this tax credit. They deserve to have equal opportunity. And let me say this as I close. We want to do everything that we can to pass these legislation, and we want to make sure those who have I-10 numbers be able to have the benefits that other Californians have in this state. And so I want to say to the policy center, all that are gathered, we appreciate you. We stand shoulder to shoulder with you in this fight, and we're not going to give up until we receive victory. Because when we fight, damn it, we win. Thank you very much.
That's right, Assemblymember Gibson. Thank you so much for those energizing words. And I think now more than ever, our health and our safety are interconnected. In our communities, demand basic dignity and respect, whether it's at home or at homes of those that hire domestic workers, in hospitals, in our schools, and most importantly, in our prisons and our jails, where social distancing is not possible. Again, transfers from state prisons to ICE detention is a death sentence for many. And although some of our bills continue the fight for our community members, they disproportionately impact by mass incarceration, were not prioritized this year. We will continue to advocate for the end of transfers from state prison to ICE custody and halt all expansions from facilities in California by urging Governor Newsom to use executive power. And to talk a little bit more about this next portion, I have the immense privilege of introducing Paul Suk from the Youth Justice Coalition, who I know will make sure that we feel the power that we all harness and hold. Paul?
For sure. Thank you, Edward, for that. I don't know if it's much of a privilege to honor me. It's much more of my privilege to work with folks that have been impacted and to really lead and speak up for folks that are unfortunately stuck for crime-based deportation reasons, oftentimes without a way out. For those families that are suffering, for those families that have lost their parents because of crime-based deportations, for families that are dealing with those cases right now as we speak. Oftentimes I get those calls seeking help from me. And sometimes I have to tell folks that it's just not very feasible, not impossible, but not very feasible at the same time. So that's more of my honor to still be here, to be able to support those folks and to really work on that. If I can, just want to ask everybody to take a deep breath. I know we've heard a lot. A lot has been said. If we could just take a deep breath, take a step back for a second, and it's just kind of reaffirm our humanity as people in this space, as migrants, of people of color, et cetera. We just take a second. Cool, thank you everyone, for sure. So as everyone was speaking, they did mention, about transfers, and transfers is a very, very, very real issue that's been going on for a long time, but really now it's being highlighted because of the COVID-19 issues that we see today, right? If not for that, we'd probably still be having the same conversations, to be honest, but we really need to take the opportunity to raise it and talk about that. And so a little bit of background for myself. I know a lot of folks on here may know me. I know a lot of folks also may not. So I am an organizer. I'm with the Youth Justice Coalition. I work mostly with young people, some who are undocumented themselves, who have undocumented family members, folks that have lost their families to deportation for crime-based reasons, et cetera. And so I come from a space that works with a lot of impacted folks. Particularly with myself, also impacted. A lot of times when we talk about migration, we just think of the southern area, what goes on here between here and Mexico on that particular borderline. But my folks, crossed landmines, walked around landmines, walked across military patrol from Cambodia to Thailand. Migration happens all over the world. You have people coming from Africa, from everywhere, right? It's like migration is just people moving around the world, trying to find whatever they're looking for in life, right? Trying to get to that place where people can get somewhere and just survive and thrive, right? Unfortunately for myself, when our families came here as Southeast Asian refugees, we came to a place that was very not welcome, right? And so even though I came as a nuclear family, it didn't last long. My mom left early on, just the struggles of adapting to a whole new environment because of the racism out there, et cetera, xenophobia, et cetera. So it became me and my dad for the most part. And then when I was 16, my dad passed away. And so I essentially became parentless, and in a community that didn't have any supports. School pushed me out everywhere I went. The only thing that was out there in the community were men with badges and firearms, to be honest. That's what we saw. Maribel's talking about Long Beach. That's where I grew up at, in the 90s, 80s and 90s, and that's what we had. And so with that type of investment in people, especially in our young people, people without status that are not citizens, what do we have waiting for them? We have jails, prisons, detention centers, deportation processes waiting for them, because that's what the system has invested in. And so I just wanted to really touch base on that. I went in at 17, got sent to prison, basically, with a 24-year sentence for the most part. After 16 years in, I got a chance to come home. But, for folks that were born here, that are citizens, they get to walk out the gate. For me, I never got to see the community. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about folks that were taken from one tank to another, from one system to another, from one form of caging to another form of caging. And oftentimes, I still see people talking about me as offender, ex-con, et cetera. But when we talk about people like that, that closes off resources, closes off opportunities, makes people not want to help. But when people came to me and said, man, this was just a person that made not the best of choices, but let's invest and trust in him, community came and got me a bond. Community came and paid my bond. Community got me out because they didn't look at me that way. They looked at me as a person, as a human being that needed support. And so when I got out, I started working with community, working with the young people, same young people I work with today. That's what happens when we change that conversation and how we label people. And unfortunately, that comes from our own communities too as well. We have good immigrant, bad immigrant, et cetera, right? These are the labels that come across. And so we just want to be mindful of how we talk about each other and about ourselves when we talk about transfers, because these are folks that are coming from state prisons, et cetera. Oftentimes people think of retribution, but I would encourage folks to think of why did they make the choices that they were made? If that person was living in Beverly Hills, would they have been forced to make the same choices that they had? Would they have set the same options? Of course not, because the resources are different. They have treatment centers and hospitals and care centers, rehab centers, whatever they need in Beverly Hills. We don't have that in South Central. We don't have that in Fresno, right? We don't have that for the farm workers. We just don't. That's the reality of it. And so people are forced into tough decisions. Because of the economic system that we live in, people are forced to fight over the crumbs that are given them. And so sometimes folks have to go into underground economies and make underground choices, because that's the only way they can pay their bills, pay their insurance notes, put food on the table, because people are forced into those decisions, and oftentimes they get criminalized for those reasons. And so for myself, just trying to survive, I ended up in the prison system. And then I came out and got stuck, got caught up in ICE. But fortunately for me, because of community support, et cetera, I was able to get out. I was able to get a pardon from Governor Brown. And I'm still able to stay here because of that reason. But that is also a privilege, because not everybody has access to that same type of access that I had. And so that's why we're asking for Governor Newsom to step up, take a little more action, use it of executive powers, just say this just to stop. And let's have a conversation about that, because these are our family members, our loved ones. We can't be, as many people as like Obama, we can't be still saying families, not felons. We can't be having that narrative. Those people also have families too. We can't forget about that. Those impacts go far and wide. We got to think about how we can resource and love our community members, not label them and send them into a system that often tears families apart forever. People are labeled. When they get deported, they still have those labels with them. Look at the folks going to El Salvador. Look at what's happening to them. Folks that go to other countries, because of those labels, they can't thrive over there because they've been stigmatized in their own homeland. Stigmatized here to be sent off because they were criminalized, to be stigmatized further in their own homeland. Where do they go? They're like no longer a part of this world when we do that to our people. And so we have to be conscious of that. And so what we've done is we've put out a letter, we've put out a bill, and unfortunately it's gotten cut, but we're not stopping. And so now we're circulating a letter, we're pushing forward. I myself wrote an amicus letter to a brief that was filed to support stopping transfers here in the state of California, to stop sending people from our jails and our lockups into these migrant detention centers. And to be clear, these detention centers are the same as prisons and jails. Everywhere I went, it was the same thing, except in the migrant prisons and jails, it's meant about money. It is deportation incorporated in America, and that's what we have to remember. Big money, big business, extracting that wealth from our communities to put into the communities of rich white folk lobbyists, to be honest, into geo and core civic, et cetera. Right? We have to be mindful about that. Our people are not commodities. Our people are not stocks and trades. Our people are human beings. Our people are family members. Our people are here. And so with that, I just want to hand it off, get back to Boom Shake. Let's break it up a little bit. Thank you for having me. Thank you for really uplifting this issue. And so let's press forward. I just want to encourage folks to really think about things. And so if you're really worried about folks that are stuck, crime-based issues, I just want to say this. Society prepares the crimes for people that it labels criminals to commit. Think about that. And how do we do that as a society? So with that, thank you.
Powerful. Paul, thank you so much. It is such really an honor. Thank you for your words. And again, we are here as California Immigrant Day of Action. There are different ways in order to impact change and making sure that we see and we obtain the change that we need and we want for our communities, as Paul was explaining. And so this is why it's urgent for, not just in the California legislature, but also pressure Governor Newsom to use executive power, right? Even when it wasn't seen as popular or a priority, then San Francisco Mayor Governor Newsom officiated the first same-sex wedding. Our humanity is a priority and it should always be popular by any means necessary.